Hey there, I'm Margaret. For nearly 6 decades, knitting was my sanctuary, my way of creating beauty, of connecting with loved ones through handmade gifts. Then about 3 years ago, I woke up one morning and could barely bend my fingers. The pain was excruciating. My doctor called it arthritis, but I called it heartbreak. Those colorful balls of yarn sat untouched in my basket. Half-finished projects remained frozen in time. I thought my knitting days were over forever. But they weren't. And today, I want to share what changed everything for me, what brought the joy of creation back into these aging hands. Because if you're struggling with stiffness, pain, or loss of dexterity, I promise you don't have to give up what you love. You know, it's funny how we take our hands for granted until they stop working properly. I remember sitting at my daughter's kitchen table, watching her kids open Christmas presents. My grandson Jack held up the half-finished sweater I'd started for him months earlier. "When will it be done, Grandma?" he asked, his eyes full of excitement. I smiled and said, "Soon, honey," but inside I was crumbling. The truth was, I couldn't knit more than 5 minutes without my fingers seizing up in pain. That sweater would probably never be finished. For those of you nodding along right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe it's arthritis for you too, or perhaps carpal tunnel, tendinitis, or just the natural stiffness that comes with aging. Whatever the cause, when your hands hurt, life changes. Simple tasks become mountains to climb. I tried everything the conventional wisdom suggested. Heat packs, cold packs, expensive ergonomic knitting needles. Every cream and ointment the pharmacy carried. They helped temporarily, but nothing solved the underlying problem. My hands were losing their strength and flexibility, and no amount of pain relief was bringing that back. My turning point came from the most unexpected place. My physical therapist's waiting room, of all places. I was there for my back, not my hands, but fate works in mysterious ways. I noticed an elderly gentleman in the corner, his fingers moving in these strange, deliberate patterns. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked what he was doing. "Hand exercises," he said with a smile. "Been doing them every day for 15 years. I'm a retired concert pianist. Can't afford to lose my dexterity." At 84, his hands moved with the grace and precision of someone decades younger. I was mesmerized, and honestly a little skeptical. Could something so simple really make a difference? That night I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'd tried pain management, but I hadn't tried strengthening and maintaining what flexibility I had left. The next morning I called my doctor and asked about hand exercises specifically designed for seniors with arthritis. "Actually," she said, "there's quite a bit of research supporting this approach." Why haven't we discussed this before? Why indeed? Sometimes the simplest solutions are hiding in plain sight. Now I'm no medical expert, just a grandmother who wanted to finish her grandson's sweater. But I've learned a lot about our hands on this journey. Our hands contain 27 bones, 29 joints, and over 100 ligaments and muscles. That's an incredible amount of moving parts in a relatively small space. As we age, the synovial fluid that lubricates these joints decreases. The cartilage wears down. Inflammation becomes more common. And suddenly, the hands that have served us faithfully for decades begin to protest. But here's the fascinating part. Our hands respond remarkably well to targeted exercise. Regular movement increases blood flow to the area, which delivers nutrients and oxygen while removing inflammatory compounds. The right exercises can strengthen the small muscles that support our joints, potentially reducing pain and increasing stability. Studies have shown that hand exercise programs can improve grip strength by up to 25% in older adults. For folks with arthritis, consistent hand exercises can reduce pain and stiffness while improving function, sometimes as effectively as medication, but without the side effects. I remember bringing this up with my knitting circle, and Martha, always the skeptic, said, "If exercise helps so much, why didn't our doctors mention it first instead of jumping straight to pills?" It's a fair question. I think sometimes the medical community focuses on treating symptoms rather than building resilience. But that's changing, and I'm grateful for it. So what exactly did I start doing? I developed a simple routine that takes about 15 minutes each day. I do it first thing in the morning while my coffee brews, and sometimes again in the evening while watching TV. I begin with a gentle warm-up. I soak my hands in warm water for about 2 minutes, just warm enough to feel comfortable, not hot. This increases blood flow and prepares the joints for movement. Sometimes I add a tablespoon of Epsom salt, which seems to help with inflammation. Then I move into finger stretches. I extend my fingers wide, hold for 5 seconds, then make a loose fist and hold again. I repeat this 10 times. It's amazing how such a simple movement can feel so good when your hands are stiff. Next comes finger touches. I touch my thumb to each fingertip, one at a time, making a small O shape. I do this slowly, deliberately, focusing on the sensation. When I first started, my pinky finger barely reached my thumb. Now they connect easily. Wrist flexibility is crucial for knitters too. I rotate my wrists in circles, 5 times clockwise and 5 times counterclockwise. Then I gently bend my wrists forward and backward, holding each position for 5 seconds. For strength, I use a soft stress ball, nothing too firm. I simply squeeze it for 5 seconds, then release. I do this 10 times with each hand. When I first started, I could barely make an impression on the ball. Now I can give it a proper squeeze. I also do what I call the piano player. I place my hand flat on a table and lift each finger individually as if playing a piano. This isolates and strengthens each finger independently. The final exercise is my favorite. I take a rubber band, loop it around all 5 fingertips, and gently spread my fingers against the resistance. This strengthens the often neglected muscles that help our fingers extend. Now I want to be clear, I'm sharing what worked for me, but everyone's situation is different. Before starting any exercise program, especially if you have arthritis or other hand conditions, please consult with your healthcare provider. What helped me might need to be modified for your specific needs. Exercise alone didn't solve everything. I had to learn to take better care of my hands throughout the day. I became much more mindful of how I use my hands. I avoid gripping things too tightly now. I take breaks during activities that strain my fingers, including knitting. I used to knit for hours without stopping. Now I set a timer for 30 minutes, then take a 5-minute break to stretch and reset. I've also made ergonomic adjustments. I switched to larger knitting needles with smoother finishes that require less grip strength. I found that bamboo needles are warmer to the touch than metal ones, which seems to help with my joint pain. Temperature management became important too. I keep a pair of fingerless compression gloves in my knitting basket. On particularly stiff days, I wear them while I work. The gentle compression and warmth make a noticeable difference. In colder months, I use hand warmers before I begin knitting. Nutrition plays a role as well. I've increased my intake of anti-inflammatory foods, fatty fish, colorful berries, turmeric, ginger, and plenty of water. I can't say for certain how much this helps my hands specifically, but my overall joint pain has improved. Sleep matters too. I never realized how my sleep position was affecting my hands until my physical therapist pointed it out. I used to sleep with my wrists bent, which can increase pressure on the nerves and exacerbate conditions like carpal tunnel. Now I try to keep my wrists in a neutral position while sleeping. These lifestyle adjustments, combined with my daily exercises, created a comprehensive approach to hand care that has been transformative. Now I'd be doing you a disservice if I painted this as an instant miracle cure. It wasn't. There were plenty of frustrating days, plenty of setbacks. About 2 months into my new routine, I experienced a severe arthritis flare-up. The pain was intense, and my first instinct was to completely rest my hands. No exercises, no knitting. Nothing. For 3 days I did exactly that, but my hands felt worse, not better. I called my physical therapist, discouraged and ready to give up. Her advice surprised me. During flare-ups, she said, we don't stop moving entirely. We just modify. Do fewer repetitions. Use less resistance. Move more gently. But keep the joints mobile, she was right. I returned to a gentler version of my exercises, and within a week, the flare-up had subsided. Another challenge came during a particularly busy holiday season. I was cooking, cleaning, wrapping gifts, using my hands constantly. My exercise routine fell by the wayside for almost 2 weeks. When I finally returned to it, I was shocked by how much ground I'd lost. My fingers were stiffer, weaker. It was a powerful reminder that consistency matters. Weather changes affect me too. Cold, damp days are still difficult. On those days, I spend extra time warming up my hands before exercises or knitting. I've learned to be patient with myself and to adjust my expectations based on circumstances beyond my control. The key lesson through all these setbacks: persistence. Not rigid, unforgiving persistence, but flexible, compassionate persistence. I've learned to listen to my body while gently encouraging it forward. After about 3 months of consistent hand exercises and improved hand care, I picked up my knitting needles again. Not to work on Jack's sweater, that felt too ambitious. Instead, I started with a simple dishcloth. Small project, thick yarn, large needles. Those first few rows were slow and a bit awkward. But there was no pain, just a gentle stiffness that actually improved as I continued. I knitted for 15 minutes, then took a break. By the end of the week, I'd finished the dishcloth and started another. Gradually, I increased my knitting time and tackled more complex projects. I made modifications to my technique to reduce strain. I switched from English-style knitting to continental style, which requires smaller movements and less strain on the fingers. I also discovered a technique called lever knitting or Irish cottage knitting, where one needle is held stationary while the other hand does most of the work. This distributes the effort differently and can be easier on arthritic hands. Project selection became strategic too. I choose yarns that are kind to my hands, smooth wools rather than rougher textures, medium weight rather than very fine yarns that require tight tension. I avoid projects with very small needles or hooks. I reorganized my knitting space for better ergonomics. My chair has proper arm support. My lighting is excellent to reduce eye strain, which indirectly helps reduce tension in my neck, shoulders, and ultimately my hands. 6 months after beginning my hand care journey, I picked up Jack's half-finished sweater again. It took longer than it would have in my younger days, but 2 months later it was complete. The look on his face when I gave it to him was worth every careful stitch, every exercise, every modification. The benefits of my improved hand dexterity extended far beyond knitting. Suddenly, I could open jars without assistance. I could button my own cardigans without frustration. I could write longer letters without my hand cramping. I rediscovered the joy of baking, kneading dough with hands that were stronger and more capable. I returned to gardening, gently working the soil and handling delicate seedlings. My confidence grew. I found myself trying new things: watercolor painting, basic woodworking, even learning a few simple pieces on my granddaughter's piano. Not because I expect to master these skills at my age, but because I can. Because my hands allow it. This journey has shown me that maintaining hand dexterity isn't just about preserving hobbies, it's about independence. It's about continuing to interact with the world in meaningful, tactile ways. It's about quality of life. As my hands improved, people noticed. Friends in my knitting circle commented on how much more I was accomplishing. My daughter remarked that I wasn't asking for help opening things anymore. I began sharing what I'd learned. First with close friends, then with my senior center craft group. I created simple handouts describing my exercise routine. I demonstrated the movements. I shared my modifications for knitting and other activities. To my surprise, people were hungry for this information. Many had resigned themselves to diminished capabilities, believing it was simply an inevitable part of aging. Seeing my progress gave them hope. One woman in my knitting group, Doris, had completely given up crochet due to painful hands. After 3 months of consistent exercises, she completed a beautiful blanket for her first great-grandchild. Another friend, Robert, returned to his beloved wood carving. These stories fill me with as much joy as my own progress. I'm not a medical professional. I don't claim to have all the answers. But I've learned that sharing our experiences, our small victories and practical solutions can be powerful medicine in itself. I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough, the emotional impact of losing dexterity. When my hands first became painful and stiff, I experienced a genuine grief. I mourned the loss of activities that had defined me, that had given my days purpose and joy. There was frustration, of course. Anger at my own body for betraying me. Embarrassment when I had to ask for help with simple tasks. Fear about what other capabilities I might lose in the future. But there was also unexpected growth. I developed more patience with myself and with the natural changes of aging. I gained deeper appreciation for the abilities I still have. I became more intentional about how I spend my time and energy. Most importantly, I learned that adaptation isn't surrender. Modifying how I knit doesn't make me less of a knitter. Taking breaks doesn't mean I'm less dedicated. Using tools and techniques that accommodate my changing body doesn't diminish the value of what I create. In many ways, I'm a better knitter now than I was before arthritis. I'm more thoughtful about each project, more present with each stitch, more grateful for the ability to create. And that's perhaps the most beautiful revelation of this journey, that working within new limitations can deepen our experience rather than diminish it. So here we are. 3 years after that painful morning when I thought my knitting days were over, I've completed 7 sweaters, countless scarves, hats for the homeless shelter, and even delicate lace shawls I never thought I'd attempt again. My hands aren't perfect. They never will be. There are still stiff mornings and tired evenings. There are still projects that remain beyond my capabilities. But I've reclaimed so much of what I thought was lost forever. If you're struggling with hand pain, stiffness, or loss of dexterity, whether from arthritis, injury, or simply the natural aging process, please hear this: don't give up. Don't accept limitations without first exploring what might be possible. Talk to your healthcare provider about appropriate hand exercises for your specific condition. Consider physical therapy, even for a few sessions, to learn proper techniques. Be consistent with your exercise routine, but gentle with yourself when setbacks occur. Look for adaptive tools and techniques for your favorite activities. And perhaps most importantly, connect with others who understand your challenges. I'd love to hear your stories, your challenges, your victories. Leave a comment below sharing your experience with hand dexterity issues or any questions you might have. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Dexterous Hands for more content on maintaining hand mobility as we age. Remember, our hands have served us faithfully for decades. With proper care and attention, they can continue to create, to connect, to express our unique gifts for many years to come. These hands still have stories to tell, beautiful things to make, and meaningful work to do. Thank you for listening to my story. Now I think I'll go pick up my knittings. I've got a baby blanket to finish for my newest grandchild.